So my voice is back. This is crazy because, well, actually, I don't even know what the fuck is crazy. I'm very anxious. I have a lot of anxiety today. Don't know why. Don't know why. But basically, my little ring light thing that I usually do in my little setup over there isn't working. So I'm doing this at my desk, and I have like, if you see, I have like 6 books piled, and they're all like William Shakespeare, and like boxes of just like, I have like severe cough and cold CVS Health boxes just like lining up so the camera can just stay up. I don't have a tripod. I really should invest in a tripod, but hi. Hello, how are you? Welcome back to Main Character with Yasmin. I'm your host. Yes, not Joe Coy. I'll tell you that right now, not Joe Coy. It's your host, Yasmin. I'm very fair. I'm very white right now. I have not seen sun in a while. It has been snowing. I had my first snow day in New York, and I'm just walking around, and I'm like, I think I like this little life. I think I like this little life. But when I had my first snow day, it was like right after I went to Korean barbecue with one of my friends, and I like walk out and I'm holding a joint, and I'm like, I really think I like this little life, you guys. You guys, I really think I might like this actual little life. It was really nice. And everyone bitches about the snow. Everyone always has something to say, and I always think it's like the most annoying thing in the entire world. But like, I actually kind of like it. I kind of like that, like, it's so cold. Do I like having to bundle up and then I just get so hot because I have so many layers on, but it's internal, but the second I take it off, I'm freezing? No, I don't like that. So I don't need to explain myself to you as to why I'm not, looking too great right now. I don't need to say anything, but I will say I'm just like, I have a lot going on right now. It's interesting. I feel like if I haven't stuck to my schedule on filming. Usually I film like every Monday or Sunday. And this is like a Wednesday, and this comes out tomorrow. I always think there's like a little bird that's coming into my window. It's snowing outside and I have the window open. So that's how mentally I have hyperhidrosis. So I literally am always having the window open. Okay. What else is happening in the world? A lot has gone on this week that I want to touch on. So let's do a debrief of the week, shall we? Do you guys mind if I just do a debrief of the week? Y'all mind if I just do a debrief of the week? Cool. Okay. Debrief of the week. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about it. I got a notification on my phone today that said Prince Charles III is going into surgery early next week for an enlarged prostate. Sorry. I actually thought, like, did someone randomly text me that as like a spam or like a funny thing? It was CNN. CNN said we're not gonna talk about the International Criminal Court with South Africa right now that's going on with Gaza. We are gonna actually talk about King Charles' fucking prostate that's up his asshole. That's what we're gonna talk about. And I just think that's like I've never really if that was a Black Mirror episode, or I feel like if The Crown was still going to be making episodes, but like in like 10 years time and that comes out, that would be insane. Imagine getting, I don't even have to imagine it. It's just getting a text saying, yeah, King Charles, yeah, he's packing really big prostates. In my opinion, major prostates. That's insane. Like, aren't you embarrassed? I wouldn't want anyone knowing, being like, she's getting her ovaries are just so enlarged. I guess ovaries and prostates are a little bit different. At one point, I did think they were the same. When I was in like 7th grade, in like biology class, they're like, what are you a carrier of? Like, it was our genetics class, and I was like, Miss Carlson, I am a carrier of prostate cancer. Yep, both my grandfathers have had it. I think I'm next. And everyone was like, hee hee hee. And I was like, why the fuck are you guys laughing at my grandpa's getting prostate cancer? And they were like, you just can't get it. I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're so misogynistic. How can't I get prostate cancer? And they're like, well, because you don't have prostates. And that was the day I realized that women and men are different. And anatomy is just anatomy. I feel like I don't even know what else to say other than I don't think I like this little life. And okay. Anyways, next on the docket, what else has happened this week? The Emmys. Critics' Choice Awards. It was the People's Choice Awards, the Critics' Choice Awards. Succession winning everything, as he should. I do think Succession is a him. Can I say that? If I look at shows and I look at like different like songs or albums and I'm like, oh, there's a pronoun for that. Sorry. Gender's a construct, yes, but like also some things are like Olivia Rodrigo's album, like the most recent one, that's a she they. Am I making any sense? Chemtrails Over the Country Club, they them. Like I genuinely think so. Whereas Succession, I know that is a cis man. He, him, his. Anyways, third thing on the docket, Vivek Ramaswamy has stopped his running to be the next Republican presidential candidate. Thank God for that, because he fucking terrifies me. He is so scary to me. I mean, anyone who's running for president right now, except for like one person, terrifies me. I just think you guys are way too. Vivek was the only young one. I think these people are way too old to be running for president. Just like how you could be too young to be running for president. Sorry, Joe Biden, Joe Byron, Donald Trump. You guys are like 1 year away from like dementia. You are very, like when you go to the doctors, you're under geriatrics. And I'm not an ageist. Maybe I am actually. Yeah, actually, fuck that. I am an ageist, because here's the thing. If you're too old to like genuinely drive yourself places, or sorry, if you have a saying that like you're too young to run for the president of the United States, you can be too old to run. I don't like, you were alive back in the 30s and 40s, and this is 2024. I really hope that math made sense. Max, double check me on that, because you guys shouldn't be running this country. Shit has changed. It's like voting for my grandparent to run for president of the United States. In good faith, Your Honor, I can't do that. In good faith, Your Honor, I can't do that. Can we start doing that thing? In good faith, Your Honor, I can't do that. In good faith, Your Honor, I can't do that one more time. Now, in good faith, Your Honor, I can't do that. I can't. I won't. Oh my God. And Joe Biden doesn't even care about Arabs. He's like, all Arabs are Muslim. I stand with the Muslim community. Bitch, what? I can't with him. And then Donald Trump, anyways, it's just kind of crazy all over. Another thing that's happened, this is a very political heavy intro of the week, debrief of the week. Nikki Haley literally said, and I quote, "The U.S. has never been a racist country." She physically said that. I quote, "has never been a racist country," talking about the U.S. When she was asked about why the Civil War happened, she was like, it's to do with the Constitution of your rights being taken away about having slaves. Sorry, what? Okay, let's say she did know it. She just didn't want to talk about it. The fact that you can't even bring it up during a presidential, I don't want to say open house, but people coming to ask you questions so they would know if they could vote for you or not. And you're not even acknowledging the blatant racism that started the Civil War literally by.
Well, I mean, this is like a given, but South Africa went to the International Criminal Court and was saying that the Israeli government is pushing for genocide and is premeditating genocide. I just find it interesting how the only news outlet to actually cover this is Al Jazeera.
If only one news outlet is covering something so historic that hasn't happened in decades, that a country like South Africa, who was an apartheid state due to the British fuck up everything. I love the UK. I will say that literally loud and proud. I love the UK so much. But you guys are genuinely sit down, babes. Literally sit down. What do you have going on there to want to go to every fucking country and want to like take all your stuff and say, that's mine now. All right. Yeah, that's mine. Yeah, I'm going to take you. What? You guys, it's so scary. But basically, every news outlet isn't talking about it. A podcast that I look up to, that I go to my news for, genuinely is The Daily. The New York Times, The Daily. And I waited 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, a week now. They haven't even brought it up. And they're rather talking about. These are the episodes that they're putting out. and they're just not talking about this. Yeah, I'm actually dead. They'll have like how an ordinary football game turns into a most spectacular thing on TV. Messy fight over the SATs. The threat of wilder war in the Middle East, which had nothing to do with what happened in the International Criminal Court. The afterlife after a gun. Trump's case for total immunity. Trump's domination. All X, Y, and Z. Anything that's happening so big, because this is a major news. This is major news. This is something where you stop what you're doing and people should be watching this, regardless of what side you're on. And the fact that there are sides to this is so crazy to me. But it's like, take a second to actually watch it. This is historic. This is something that people need to be educated on of what's going on. And so, I mean, that's why I'm even talking about it, is because if you're going to listen to something, I hope you listen to this, that, like, you know, it's a very white dominated thing that is the news. It's just political in it. If there's one thing that the British gave that was good for the world, isn't haggis, isn't beans, isn't, what else did you guys give? What did the British do for the world? Everything here is the British take and lose control. British Empire backs the colonies. Colonization. You guys gave us in it in Love Island. So for that, I'm forever grateful. I'm literally forever grateful to you. Okay, next. What we're doing this week. This is so crazy. All right, let's buckle in. All right. To my listener, what we're going to talk about today is something that I can bet all my life savings that you have felt before. That your parents have felt before, that your loved ones have felt before, that your fucking animal has probably felt before, and that is anxiety. The most beautiful, glamorized, romanticized, glorified thing in the entire world. We are going to talk about my first time having a panic attack, what anxiety means, different triggers, how to alleviate it, and how to support your loved ones when they are having an anxious or an anxiety moment. Okay, let's get into it. So before we even get started, what is anxiety? I'm going to look up the definition just to tell you so we're on the same page. Okay, so anxiety is an anxiety disorder. It is a feeling of dread, fear, and uneasiness. It's an intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Fast heart rate, rapid breathing, sweating, and feeling tired may occur. Now, anxiety stems from different things for different people. Anxiety is, I would say, it has lost the meaning and the intensity that it should be given. I think like when people, and I say this, I am people, but like, for example, I'm watching my favorite reality TV show or something. I'm like, oh, I'm so anxious right now. Like, I'm going to have like an anxiety attack. When like, genuinely, no, I'm not. I think we're just putting a feeling to a word and we're minimizing that word when like anxiety is a disorder. And I think it is such a human thing because it is biologically your body kind of going into flight, fight, or freeze mode, and it's in the defensive. It's our brains are wired to, and I've talked to my cousin who is a psychiatrist about this. Anxiety is not always a bad thing. I think people always have, there's a negative connotation for anxiety because majority of the time it's a really awful thing, but anxiety also means that you are in touch with I think humanistic emotions. And before even I get into that, if this is going to trigger you in any way to talk about anxiety, depression, mental illness, mental health, maybe don't listen to the episode. You could skip ahead, and we'll be giving out different phone lines after for mental health resources. Regardless, you are not alone in this. I can promise you right now. You will have your hand held. Yep, handheld. I will hold your hand. Oop. Okay, let's go. So the first time I realized I had anxiety is when I watched my dad have an anxiety attack, and I was like, this might be genetic. I'm not going to talk about my dad's anxiety, but like I realized when you grow up with people who do have anxiety, you are more likely to get anxiety and have anxiety. It's I mean, I would call that generational trauma. I'll touch on my dad in a sec, but for me, my first panic attack, I was in high school. And it was the first time I thought I was dying. And panic attacks are a part of anxiety attacks. So anxiety attacks, panic attacks are all different. Um, I will get into that in a second. But that was the first time I couldn't breathe fully. Basically, what happened was I was unable to go, and this is so minuscule and so stupid, but I was unable to go to a theater camp that I worked really hard for. And it was the night before my ACT exam. My parents were like, we don't want you to go out. Like, we don't want you to be, we don't want you to go to a sleepaway camp for theater, whatever it was. I know it's so dumb, sounds so stupid, but to me at the time, it was life or death. Because I was like, you're stopping me from my career. And I was like, what? Like in ninth grade? I know the fact that also I was studying for the ACT in ninth grade, that's a different conversation. But, or was it 10th grade? Regardless. And I was so distraught that I was like, okay, well, that's not too bad. But I think because of the situation I was in, that I had a huge test. I have testing anxiety. The day after, felt betrayed in a sense, because like I thought my parents were gonna like champion me through this, and they were, but like they had their own reasons. And so all of a sudden I just felt a shortness of breath. My first anxiety and like panic attack, it was like a mixture of both. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like my inhales were so short, and I felt like someone was sitting on my chest. And like your mind is going at like 1,000 miles an hour. And like I hold my anxiety in my stomach. So nausea, like it feels like I could throw up at the drop of a hat. It feels uneasiness, and all of a sudden I just fell to the floor, and I just started rocking back and forth. I genuinely didn't know what was going on, but I just thought everything was like closing in on me, and I just started crying and yelling, and I couldn't stop. And then I like blacked out for a second, and then ended up in my closet, and the door was locked. My parents were like, you good? Like, what is going on? Like, over something not so major, you know? And it wasn't a tantrum either. I will say that, because it hurt, but I don't know what happened. It just, all of a sudden, like I couldn't breathe. And I'm just in the closet, and I needed the lights shut. And then I was like, I just kept rocking back and forth, and I was there for like a good hour. And what helped me was just having like my grandfather behind the door, just like sit there and not say anything. And so afterwards I slept, did awful on the ACT the next day, but that's okay. We knew that was going to happen. I was like, what was that? I have never felt like that in my entire life. Like, family members have passed away. I have, like been hurt before, but like friends have left me, like, but I have never gotten such an attack like that. And so I asked my parents, and they were like, yes, to go see a psychiatrist and a therapist. And the therapist was just like, you have anxiety. That's just, it is what it is. Like, you're sad sometimes. Like, this is adolescence. You're in puberty. Like, you're a teenager. Like, this is so normal. And I think I have a problem with this. Or at the time I didn't, but now I do. I think, and I could be completely wrong, and everyone has their own opinions on this, and I literally should have started off at the beginning of the podcast by saying this. I am not a doctor. I'm not a health professional. I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a therapist. I am not a professional in this field whatsoever. I struggle with some of these symptoms, but I am not a professional, so do not take any advice that I'm giving you. Like, take it with a grain of salt. Like, I am not Bible. Your Honor, I'm not Bible, okay? And so what was just so horrific was that I just thought, like, this was normal. Like, feeling like you're dying was so normal. Oh, like, that's fine. That's normal. And it was just years went by, and I knew, like, I kept having these random, like, anxiety and panic attacks. Like, they were a bit different. They would come and go. Like, it'd be, like, once every other month. Mental health, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't sad. That was the thing. Like, I genuinely wasn't depressed. I wasn't hopeless. I wasn't at that time in my life. I wasn't any of these things. But I just kept like having these attacks that I thought I was dying and like everything with the world was ending for me. And then college came and I was a sophomore. It was 2018 or 2019. And I saw a psychiatrist and they were like, I took a test and they're like, you have panic disorder. And I was like, that's kind of a slay. What is it? And they were like, you basically, nothing can trigger it. It's just the synapses in your brain. It is the chemistry that your brain has that will cause it to feel like it is in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And it just happens and you just will have a panic attack without any triggers. That is what panic disorder is. And I was like, so you're saying, so if I'm gathering the data correctly, I could have a panic attack that makes me feel like I am dying at any given moment without any given trigger? And he was like, you betcha. And I said, great. God gives his toughest challenges to his toughest warriors, Your Honor. I'll take it. And then I got on antidepressants. And so this is the thing. With antidepressants and anti-anxiety, they can go, one can cover both of them. And, there's many different challenges that you have to try different ones. Some work for some people, some don't work. I will get to medication a little bit towards the end of the podcast, but I got on my medication and I haven't been off it since. And my panic attacks have gone down. I will say that. And that is not only with medication. To be clear, always have therapy with medication. Now to the next part. Let's talk about the pressures of therapy and the pressures of being fine. And like healthy living and the right way of living. I want to start off by saying I am a hypocrite. We've talked about this. I'm fully a hypocrite. I have a podcast saying we're all hypocrites. I always say you should be in therapy. I tell my partner, you need to be in therapy. I tell my sister, my brother, you need to be in therapy. I tell my friends, you need to be in therapy. My parents, you need to be in therapy. Now ask me right now, as my viewer and listener, am I, Yasmin Hamadi, in therapy? No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I'm not in therapy. And I think that's just laziness. There's no other reason for that other than me being lazy or like finding a good therapist. I had a really good one when I was in LA, but when you leave the state, they can't treat you anymore, which is like weird. And also the fact that mental health services should be free for people. So we have like the highest rate of like people offing themselves in the entire world. And I genuinely think it's because we don't have access to healthcare. Anyways, that's fine. But I'm not in therapy. And I don't necessarily believe that everyone should be in it. And I'm going to say that with a grain of salt. I think everyone, if they are struggling, if they don't know who they are, which I think is wait, I'm contradicting myself, but hear me out. Let me walk this through with you. I think when it comes to mental health, everyone should be searching for and looking for ways to cope and ways to settle and ways to figure their mind out. And I think therapy is the best way to go about it. I think this has to do with accessibility fully because the chances of you getting a therapist and then them working with you and it's great and it's amazing right off the get-go is kind of slim, okay? And then you go into, does your insurance cover it? Majority of the time, barely. Genuinely barely. And then the third one is, okay, the insurance doesn't cover it. It's like $200 as an out for like 50 minutes. And then you go into, since the pandemic, everything's online and you lose that human emotion and that like physicality of being with someone and reading someone's body language, them reading you. So I think it could be, and I don't know how I feel about like online therapy. I mean, I have done it. I've done it for so long, but I think in person has worked the best for me. So I'm never going to be the person to say you need to be in therapy right now. You need to be in therapy unless like someone I love is struggling and there's ways that I can't help them, that they can't help themselves, that there's different resources that are more accessible to them. Then I would say get a therapist. But if not, like, I think therapy is not the end all be all for living a better life. I don't think it's the end all be all. Just like how medication, like just taking my medication is not an end all be all. Okay, I'm fine now, no more panic attacks. It's also with therapy. It's also with different life choices that you make. And people will disagree with me on this. I'm pro therapy till my last breath, and I think there's a major stigma against it. And I think everyone, if they feel like they need someone to talk to, they should be reaching out to a professional. Absolutely, 100%. I'm literally on the prowl for a therapist as we speak, but I'm not gonna say that that is the end all be all. Does that make sense? So now that I'm talking about therapy and different life choices to make something feel better, I think with anxiety, I think there are ways and avenues to go about it that are more than just what we see on TV or TikTok or what our friends say or what people say. Next on the docket, I want to talk about when it comes to anxiety is finding what works for me doesn't equate that it will work for you. And I think this episode is more than just anxiety. It is also about finding like tips and ways to live your best life that works for you and not just for other people. I think for me, I know that there are some things in life that will make my life easier that I have tried, and some have worked and some haven't. For example, I see, and this is the problem that I'm going to talk about later on the podcast, or actually, fuck it, I'll just talk about it now. But I think on social media, when it comes to anxiety, depression, PMSing, or just being like sad girl, whatever the hell, you see on social media people being like tips and tricks of how to do this, or people will post their panic attacks or like their mental breakdowns on social media. And I'm want a disclaimer. If you find solace in that, you love doing that, or not love, you find a community in doing that, and that is like your way of like asking for help and reaching out for support, like all power to you. I support you. I will comment. I will be there in whatever way I can. But I do think it is something to remember and to think about that we have now made. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've kind of realized it. I think we've like glorified a little bit or romanticized having mental illnesses. And I think that could be wrong of me to say, but I really do think so. Just a girly with, like, ugh, I have the worst PMDD, or like I have the worst depression. Like I'm so depressed. But like, and I said this in the beginning of the podcast, but are we like making it so normalized? And it is normal, but are we like making it so generic that like we are normalizing depression? And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's an interesting to look at of like, you know, without any warning, you'll just see someone like recovering from like, I've seen like attempts on TikTok, and like I thought, and I'm like, oh, like I can handle that, but like, what if someone's on like scrolling through TikTok and they're already having a bad fucking day, and you are fully triggered by this, and you can't help it. And what do? You go and you say, not interested, please don't show me again. That takes that 5 seconds. Your anxiety is already spiraling. And I'm not saying that like we should like, I don't know if it has to do with TikTok or Instagram's like community guidelines, terms and conditions and whatnot, but I think people are really going to above measures to try to cope with their shit and like try to find that community that I don't know. Maybe I'm genuinely wrong, but is serving you as much as you think it is. Who am I though? I actually have no fucking clue. But I've realized whenever I'm having an anxious day, a sad day, and this is something that I think like if you or your friends or your loved ones are struggling with depression or anxiety or anything in mental illnesses, people are so quick to give unsolicited advice. Like there are so many things that I see on the internet for, and like on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest, of like, when you're feeling like this, here are some tips and tricks to help. Or like when like they do this, or like I feel like when I was younger, like I would like be having a panic attack and people would be like, just breathe. Or like if you're having a bad day, people are so quick to say, well, just don't worry, just be happy, don't be sad, baby, don't be sad, just be happy, life is so beautiful, take a look outside, look at that, you have a roof over your head. All of this is true. All of this is absolutely true. I'm grateful. two truths can exist where I'm having a really shitty day and I'm on the verge of an anxiety attack. And also, I should be goddamn grateful that I have a roof over my head and I have 3 meals and I am healthy and I have health insurance. Like, all of that can exist at the same time. But there's a special place in hell for people who are like,
Just be happy. Like, just like drink some water. You're good, babe. Don't worry.
stop it. For your own sake, too. Just stop it. I think it's also, for me, when I know I'm having a mental breakdown or panic attack, or like I know my triggers. I know, unless there's a new one coming up that I don't know about, which would really suck. When I am getting my period, like a week in, like when my uterine wall is like about to line or about to come off, the lining's about to fall off. I'm exhausted. Basically, I have PMDD, so I know I'm gonna cry. I know I'm gonna be easily agitated. I know I'm gonna be sad. I know I'm gonna have really bad body dysmorphia. It's just gonna be so much one right after the other, and there are certain things now that I know that will help me when I'm asking like my partner for advice or like what do I do when I'm feeling like this, like. What I think is so great that she does, and I think we can all learn from, is the first thing from the get-go is saying, all right, talk to me. Tell me everything that you're feeling. So it kind of gives you the mic to say how you're feeling rather than hearing, just go get a glass of water. You'll be fine. Or like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's awful. Like, wait, just go outside and get some fresh air. I'm sure it'll help. If you are the friend that is being reached out to from a loved one who is asking you for advice and who's asking for you to be a pillar of support, I really encourage you to listen before talking and to ask, what do you need from me as a friend? If you give unsolicited advice, you're fucking annoying. Like, I just, and listen, when it comes to everything else in life, I give unsolicited advice. I'll give you fashion unsolicited advice. I'd give you relationship unsolicited advice. I'd give you X, Y, and Z unsolicited advice. When it comes to mental health, keep your mouth shut and listen. You know? I see on social media, I see on like TikTok where it's like, do X, Y, and Z if you want to live the most fruitful life. And I think this just goes to show how at the end of the day, no one knows what's best for you more than you. I see a bunch of these like clean girlies and like these boys on social media being like,
I just went to the ice bath with my homies, as in my coworkers, like at 6 a.m. Like the grind doesn't stop.
and then I hear from the girlies,
Just had some lemon water, warm lemon water first thing in the morning. Just did Pilates. Life is so good. Oh my God, I meal prepped, so I'm all set for the rest of the week. Oh my God, I already worked out this morning. Oh my God, journaling. I just meditated. I woke up and meditated for 15 minutes, and I'm all set for the day. Oh my God, I just journaled. Oh my God, I just did blah 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 blah.
spare me, spare me. Literally spare me. I'm sorry. I'll be the first to say it. Meditation does not work on me. I'm not sure it doesn't work on me. I just don't like it. I have ADD. I'm not saying that either. Once again, if you're trying to cancel me for this, fuck yourself. But I can't sit still for a while without my mind wandering to how do I solve climate change? I journal only genuinely when I'm going through something or like if I'm feeling artsy. I'm not the I want to do better at that. I want to journal, but I know it's not realistic and I'm setting myself up for failure and already feeling more anxious about how I live my life than I already was to begin with if I don't write. Ice baths, I don't like it. I don't like meal prepping because I don't like that I'm eating the same meal for every single like dinner or like lunch or something. I think all of these tips and tricks that people want to give online, I think it's really entitled to say that that is the end all be all. And I know there's room for like people to be like, well, obviously this doesn't work for everyone, but I think like giving options of how to go about things and not saying that there's one rule book of how to live your best life to avoid anxiety, to avoid depression, to avoid insecurities. Like this is what you should do when like genuinely I think life is all about figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. That is what life is. Like it's just failing and then getting back up and doing it again. And that's like finding what works for you. Like when I was younger, I swore to God, I hated making my bed. I said it caused me more anxiety to have to wake up, make my bed quickly, and then go to like do whatever I had to do. When I'm probably going to get into bed later that evening, it doesn't make sense to me. And people would tell me to make my bed constantly, like it'll help, it'll make, and I didn't like it. And then now that I'm older now, and I realize like it actually, for me, this helps me now. It didn't before, and I'm not gonna say I should have done it when I really did try to do it. It just wasn't successful, and it made me anxious. When now it serves me. Not everything is gonna be there for forever when it comes to tricks and tools to help make you feel better. Meditating doesn't work for me. And in acting, a lot of professors and a lot of people say meditating is a really big thing of helping you figure out what works and like makes, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. And I don't like yoga. Like it doesn't, all of these things that might help other people that genuinely like probably serve a lot of people. And that is incredible. It doesn't serve me. And now that I know that what works for me and what doesn't, I am better equipped to go about handling triggers, to go about handling my anxieties, my insecurities, my PMDD when I'm about to have a panic attack. Because of the lived experiences and my failures, I'm much better equipped to handle it and to grapple with it. Grapple. We don't talk about that word enough, of grappling. So basically, I want to tell you guys about a little time where I decided to change my entire way of life to kind of go towards how TikTok and social media were trying to say this is how you live the most fruitful life, the least anxious life, and it went miserably. There was a time, I think, like over the summer where I was like unemployed. Basically, I decided I wanted to wake up every morning at 6 a.m. I was going to go to the gym by 6:30, be ready, make my smoothie in the morning, not have coffee, and journal, and then meditate all before 9 a.m. And I know I talked about doing that a little bit, but I want to go into more details about doing that. I also was saying how at the gym you should be doing only Pilates, no more weights, and cardio. So I decided to just go on runs. And I hate running. I hate it. But apparently it makes you happier. I would meditate and do ice plunges with my dad. Apparently it makes you happier and helps your metabolism. I completely stopped eating like sweets at night because like you shouldn't be eating after 8 p.m. if you started eating at 12, and intermittent fasting because it's better for your metabolism, blah, blah, blah. I decided to stop drinking a lot, and I would journal before bed again, so morning and night. And I started, in the beginning, it was like, okay, I'm trying this out. It was exciting. But as I realized it, I was like, everything is such a chore. All of this is so, it actually is causing me anxiety to do this. Like I don't, only having 8-hour windows because that's what's best for you. It helps your mental health, for your metabolism, and then blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it might serve other people. It doesn't serve me. Journaling morning, noon, and night. It reminds me of that morning, noon, and night. I care about her. It's about Prince Charles and Camilla. Speaking of his prostate, waking up at 6 a.m. No, like all of these things, I realize that social media and like the pressures that we have to like better our mental health is actually perhaps worsening our mental health for like putting these ideas into your brain rather than actually thinking about what stems everything. And lastly, I wanted to talk about this because I don't hear about this enough. I think this part is for my immigrant friends, people who are immigrants or children of immigrants, people who come from different cultured backgrounds, etc., etc. My dad is an immigrant. My mom isn't, but her parents are. And my dad came from Lebanon, and he left the civil war in Lebanon in the 70s, late 70s, early 70s, mid 70s, mid 90s, featuring Jonah Hill. And he was like 12 or 13 when he left Lebanon from a war. He used to hide under the rubble. He used to hide under desks. He's seen things that are incomprehensible to my brain. And he has anxiety. My dad has a lot of anxiety. And as a kid, I used to resent him for that and realizing, like, why aren't you fixing yourself, blah, blah, blah. When, like, I feel like his trauma passed on to me because of it's just generational. And looking back, I think if you're the child of a parent and there is generational trauma there, I think, and this is to the children, like just to all the children, like people like me, I really implore you to give your parents grace and to give people grace who have this PTSD. And I'm not saying that lightly, but who actually have PTSD and trauma and are now starting a new life at a new place. All the little things that get him anxious, like sometimes, like when I'm doing a rehearsal and I'll scream in the middle of a monologue, he'll come rushing down and say, "What's wrong? Are you okay? What's wrong? What's wrong?" I'm like, chill the fuck out. That's a response in his brain that it is fight, flight, or freeze mode. And we don't understand that because we're privileged here. And I know this episode's going all over the place. I've always said this episode, like, main character is crazy. But also main characters, we have anxiety and we have panic disorder and PMDD and PTSD, generational trauma. We have X, Y, and Z, whatever you have. That's a main character thing, honey. I wanted to just say for all the kids who are like affected by generational trauma, and like we're going to have that. And chances are it's in our blood. It's going to go into our offspring if you decide to have one. Like, I think that's when we start to discuss and look at some tips and tricks of what helps us. I think it's obviously for anyone, whether you have generational trauma or not, but I think it's also understanding that it's more than just what's happening in real time and what's going on in our lives at that given moment or in that time of our lives. But I think it goes back to the environment in which we're raised and the environment in which your parents are raised. And I think that's important to acknowledge and not forget that. I want to talk about tips and tricks. I asked a bunch of my followers. Some things that help them when they're anxious. Some tips and tricks of alleviating their pain and their anxieties and their insecurities. And genuinely, none of these could work for you. So take this with a grain of salt. I think and I'm not trying to give you advice. I'm just trying to show you that there's so many other answers of how to help yourself. If there's not just one road. You don't just road beauty, Hailey Bieber. You don't have just one like avenue to feel better about yourself. There's so many other ways. So these are some tips and tricks to alleviate your anxiety. I asked a bunch of my followers on Instagram, what are some ways that help you? There is no one right way. There's not one wrong way. Everything, take it with a grain of salt. Try it out. If you're feeling anxious, insecure, uneasy, try out some things that help other people because it might help you as well. So here are a few of them. Breathing exercises. So having that inhale and exhale. Someone just listening to me and trying not to resolve my problems. Talking about it and through it, making a plan to solve it. Dancing, meditation, doesn't work for me. Having a tea, talking to a friend, crying, making noises. I think people always, when they're anxious, like the innate reaction is to be quiet and go in. Sometimes it's nice to just get a pillow and scream into the void. Sometimes you just need that. Walking, cold air, the tapping method. That's an EMDR when you have PTSD of just tapping yourself. Music, sometimes medication. Someone said masturbation helps with anxiety. Do it. Exercise, yoga, having a weighted stuffed animal, sitting down alone to watch a movie. And also, I think this was a good one. Someone said actually realizing no one cares as much as we think that they do. Like if you don't get a text back or you said something and you're now like reliving that moment like hours later, like genuinely. And I think this helps with like in my ego, but like no one cares as much about you as you think that they do. Candles, talking to your mom, your best friend, herbal tea. Someone said watching you, and I was like, thank you. And then someone said nothing send tips, and I said, thank you. And then someone said, speaking to my wonderful girlfriend to talk me down. You're welcome. But there's so many things, naming objects in your room to stay present. I feel like the opportunities are endless to figure out what works for you, and it's a trial and error. So if you're feeling any of these feelings, you're feeling down, you're feeling agitated and like icky, like there's so many ways to feel better. And like don't feel hopeless and don't lose hope. You're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing is you are genuinely, I can't say it enough, you are not alone. leave this podcast knowing that at the end of the day, no one knows what's best for you more than you do. Try so many different things. Meditating does not work for me. I'm not going to try it. Maybe in 10 years, I'll give it another go. But until then, I'm good off of it. I love drinking lemon water in the morning, hot lemon water. In 5 days, it might not be my thing anymore, and that's okay. Know what your triggers are, know what suits you and what works for you. And also, when someone, a loved one, is coming to you, remember to listen. Listen more than talk. Sometimes people just need an ear. It's literally the human condition just to be heard and to be understood. And so when going about things like mental health and anxiety and insecurity and depression and all the other ones under the umbrella of the mental health, just lead with empathy. And if you can't empathize, which is fair, don't pretend to, but strive to. Just listen. Anyways, I just wanted to say I love you. Have a good rest of your day. Next week's episode is going to be so gag worthy. And I'll see you next week. Bye. And give love to yourself. You need it. We all do. Make sure to like, subscribe, download all future Main Character with Yasmin episodes, and major thank you to our incredible editor and producer, Max Shepardson. I'll see you next week. Bye.